Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Duel Today podcast, where we had the privilege of sitting down with Emily Sander for this week's show. Emily is a C-suite executive and founder of Next Level Coaching. As an ICF-Certified Coach, she guides clients towards new perspectives that enable them to adapt and evolve as leaders. She is the author of the book Hacking Executive Leadership. She was a part of the testing team for the first Kindle device. She's a part of a 6-person startup, and she's built a global client management team from scratch. You can find Emily on her website at nextlevel.coach, as well as through her book, Hacking Executive Leadership. We had a great time sitting down and chatting with Emily about a variety of topics, a little segue into some discussion around Russell Wilson for you football fans. We talked about the book, The 5 a.m. Club, and how routines can benefit us in our day-to-day lives. And probably most impactfully, at least for me, was a conversation centered around when we get into the mental state of constantly comparing ourselves to others, as well as comparing ourselves to where we expected us to be at this particular point in time. Like I said, we had a great time with Emily. Look forward to hopefully talking with her again in the future. And we hope that you guys enjoy the show as much as we did. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Thief of joy. So, I mean, if you're constantly comparing, you're just setting yourself up for disaster. So, I mean, if you're going to compare yourself, I think maybe Tony Robbins said this, but like compare yourself to you yesterday. Well, hello.
How's it going, Emily?
Hello.
Well, how are you guys?
Doing good. Thanks for taking the time to get with us. Before we kind of get into everything, I just wanted to remind you that at the very end, we'll ask you to kind of advertise yourself, ask you to tell people how they can find you. Then we'll like fake end, and then we'll stay on for like 5 minutes so we can do like a little recap.
Little debrief. Okay.
Yeah. But
Cool.
How's the past like month and a half been for you? I know we had some scheduling mix-ups, so thanks for being flexible. But
Sorry.
No worries.
How's it been?
It's been really good. It's been very busy, but like the good kind of productive busy, not the crazy, hectic burnout busy. So lots of things happening. Got some new clients, got a new coaching platform, getting really into like SEO blogging and all that jazz. So yeah.
Nice.
How about you guys?
It's been good. We were just talking about Tyler's outfit. We did a Spartan race. Was it last?
Two weekends ago.
Well, it was the 15th and 16th. So yeah. Weekish ago. And we learned some lessons on that one. I definitely definitely going to be changing some things going forward, just because I thought I was a lot better off than what I really was. So, but we finished the event. Do you guys
do CrossFit or no?
No, we do not.
I'm not that athletic.
Yeah. And I mean, we're both golfers. We're training to like play professional golf and compete at that level. So fortunately, we don't need to be like CrossFit type. Yeah. So, but still, those types of events are still fun to do, and they're challenging. But that was a learning process there. Ran into some stuff.
As I get older, sometimes I can't do what I used to be able to do in the gym. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should not deadlift that amount or not clean and jerk that amount. That might be bad for my lower back.
Yeah. And I was talking to, we did a recording a couple of days ago, and was telling the gentleman that I feel like I was fooling myself, because I did play football for several years, and I was strong, and I've lost a lot of weight. And some of those stories I kept telling myself,
Yeah.
I felt like they were a lot closer. I felt like my body was still capable of that level, and not so much. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I've been
a
like
lot.
mind over matter, just like getting the right mindset. And now I'm like, maybe
Yeah.
some more body weight exercises.
Yeah, well, with it being different than the Tough Mudder, because we did that last year,
Mm-hmm.
and with what you just said, Emily, like that race is a lot more. You can grind it out mentally. This Spartan race is just it demands a different
You have to
aspect
operate at a
of
different level.
performance.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I understand what Nico's saying, but I think we both got lulled into that false sense of security 100% because we were freaked out of our minds for the Tough Mudder last year because we had never done anything like it. We didn't really train that much or really at all for some of us. And I felt like we killed it.
Nice.
And we were awesome to go into the Spartan race, like, yeah, same thing, different company, whatever, it's gonna be fine. So
I applaud you though. You're pushing yourselves. Yeah. That's awesome.
well, it's fun. It's fun to do something that is challenging, right? Whether it's a physical thing or something mentally or work related. You learn a lot, or at least I've been able to take away a few really cool things from each race that I probably wouldn't have learned otherwise if I didn't do it. So they're cool to do.
Limits if you don't test yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
guys are out there. That's awesome.
100%. But well, Emily, you mentioned that you started a new coaching platform or something. What's that about?
That's just so like there's coaching platforms that match. It's really cool. Like organizations who want to provide coaching for their leadership team or for their staff or anything like this, and then they match them with coaches. So I partnered with another coaching platform, which I'm really excited about.
Sweet. Did you like know someone with the coaching platform, or is that something that you found just in online search, or how did that come to pass?
Yeah, one of my coaching colleagues that I went to, the ICA, the coaching school I went to, knew about this platform and was on it, and he sent me a name and contact info and referred me in. So it was one of those connection deals. That's how
people get bigger and better in the corporate world. It is all about networking. One of the my mom is a VP at a graphic arts company, and one of the things that I remember her mentioning a lot is I can't remember, she probably heard this from somewhere, but what was it? It's not your net worth is directly related to your network. So
that's a good one.
That's exactly what you're doing there. That's awesome. Now, how did you, I saw your website that you'd worked as a C-level executive, did the whole Fortune 500 thing. What was the moment or maybe a series of events that kind of led you into coaching or made you realize that that's where you wanted to take your career?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was coaching before I knew what a coach was. In the different leadership positions I had, I looking back, I'm like, oh, like I had some coaching elements worked in there. And then, I cycled out of a few companies, and I was reflecting back and saying, like, what was my favorite part, or like, what kind of do I remember now that it's all said and done? And it was the interactions that I had with people. Like, hey, I helped Jennifer like actually get promoted. Or, hey, I helped Christian with his, being comfortable in front of a crowd and presenting. Like, those are the memorable things to me and the meaningful things to me. And then when I found that coaching was a thing, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I am already. It's not what I want to be. It's just what I am. And so I'll go, through the proper training and different things to really know my stuff. But as soon as I paired those two together, I was off to the races, and I did them both in parallel for a while. But earlier this year, in fact, I transitioned to my coaching practice full time.
Good for you. That's major props for you to make that connection and make that shift. One of the stories I tell all the time is when I was getting into coaching, I got my certification through Tony Robbins training school. And the gentleman that I spoke with, he talked about how he had worked in the exact same job for 30 years before he decided to become a coach. And he was giving me props for basically making the same decision, but way earlier in life. And I think too many people do that, right? Like too many people just sit there stagnant. They get burnt out. They're not fulfilled in what they do. And then, I don't know, push comes to shove and they're like, I'm going to do this thing that I've always been passionate about or that I have talent in. And then they start to see growth and more fulfillment in their life. And yeah, I'm glad that you help people realize that because we need it.
Yeah. Complacency is like a tricky thing. You can be so comfortable and just like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And then 17 years go by or 30 years go by. You're like, what just happened? So yeah, being proactive about those things is important.
It's almost like, go ahead, Ty.
All right. I was going to say not only that, but also just, I feel like a lot of people want to do something different or they wish they could do something different, but then it becomes the push and pull of I've done this for so long and I'm just going to throw it away to go pursue this thing, or they've spent so many years within one specific company that it's hard to leave what's comfortable and what they know to expect week in and week out and just kind of get in that trap of I can't do anything different. I'm just going to have to settle and lower my bar down to where I'm at currently. I mean, that was something I did recently here with I've been working in the golf industry I'm 29, so 17 years was the first time I started working with my dad at his course. And did all those things. And not that I totally removed myself from the golf industry, but I just went back to graduate school and trying to get on the research end of golf course management, grasses and stuff. So it was, and I had the same thing with what you were saying, Nico, is people are like, oh, that's awesome. You made that decision so early and so young. Like, I wish I would have done that. And I've never heard anybody say the opposite. Never heard anybody say you're stupid for making a change, or they don't say that they wish that they would have done the same thing years ago. And I don't know if it's a generational thing or where it was expected of, because those are older individuals. And I don't know if it's a time thing that they're just expected to have 1-2 jobs for their life and that was going to be it, and they would retire and then game over, right? So I don't know. It's interesting to me, the difference in the generational perspectives.
Yeah, I think it was like you got out of college, you worked for like General Electric or whatever for 30 years, got the gold watch and then peaced out. But that was just how people did things. But yeah, now it's much different. And I will say there's the timing aspect. Like, for instance, I had several clients during COVID who had these dreams and aspirations and were wanting to make a career change. But they're like, Emily, I can't right now because I got 6 family members and I got to take care of this and that. I'm like, totally get it. Now is probably not the right time. However, when things settle down and an opportunity presents itself, then certainly revisit it. So, not to say go have a knee-jerk reaction and go do this and chase the stars without any thought or planning to it. But certainly it's your life, and it's cliched, but life is short and it's not guaranteed by any matter of means. So you got to take it by the horns and make it what you want it to be at a certain point.
Yeah. And even if people do find themselves in those situations where they have a lot going on, I feel like there's still small, subtle things that they can start to do to lay the foundation for those next big life changes that are coming. Another Tony Robbins thing I've mentioned before is people overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in a decade. And right there is a great example. Even if that person has 6 kids or a large family and they have a lot going on, maybe they can start reading books, just 10 minutes at night, start to learn a little bit about what they want to get into so that when they do have the time, then they can go all out and really dive into whatever that next change is for them.
Yeah. I love that quote. And who said the quote, like, when you're like exhausted, out of breath, like dripping with sweat, you're at about 40% of your capacity or your potential.
Sounds like David Goggins to
Yeah.
me, but
Something,
it was
something like that. And I'm just
probably
like,
somebody else before him.
yeah. But I remember like I had a sports coach growing up. I was playing soccer. We were running suicide, which is 17, the long way of the field. Okay. So 17 down and back. And like people were getting sick and getting winded and stuff. And he was like, you're at about 40%. Like you're halfway there. And I'm like, that's crazy. But in like the playoff games, when we were winded and tired and in overtime, we were able to tap into like, we're at about 50% here. So we got more in the tank. So, yeah. And then I love what you said. It reminded me of a book I just read called The 5 a.m. Club. And it talked about one of the pieces of that morning routine is taking time to increase your knowledge. So like read a book or listen to a podcast or like just increase your awareness of the world and your industry and things like this. And if you do that, for just part of an hour every day over the course of the year, you're going to just increase your knowledge in great ways.
I love the saying, if we're not growing, we're dying. And I feel like too many people, they get complacent and they just think that everything's okay. And then eventually they get to that breaking point where they look back and they're like, I haven't grown at all in the past X amount of years. This is a problem. I got to do something. Blah, blah, blah. And that's, I don't know. Is that like the midlife crisis? Is that how that happens?
I mean, I think it can happen anytime. It's an empty feeling though. It's like, oh my God, like what have I done? Like I've wasted it. And it's just such a unsettling feeling. So I think, again, if you're in your job and you're doing it for the money, which is a perfectly valid reason to take care of stuff, like great, but outside of work, be involved and participate in things that are meaningful to you and do give you purpose and fulfillment. Because that just makes you a complete person. I mean, you talked about growth. I will learn something new or continue to improve myself until the day I die, because that's what I think humans are supposed to do. Like a tree is supposed to grow. Like you don't go try to grow tree. Like it just does that because it's like, that's what a tree does. Like humans are supposed to learn and explore and be better. So I think that's just what we're meant to do. And that's how you are a good human.
In the business space and with your clients, how do you see self-talk affecting their complacency?
Oh my gosh. Self-talk is huge. That's like such a huge topic. People underestimate the power of that because a lot of time we all have our internal voice going, and that's usually a critic or some sort of judgment. And sometimes it's blaring its nonsense over your internal PA system, but it's happening all the time. And so if you think about going through your entire day with nothing but negative things being told to you, and you can't turn that all the way off. You can't turn the volume all the way off. You can turn it down. It's like trying to race a car with your foot on the brake. Whereas if you're at least at neutral, you can kind of like roll down the road. But if you're saying positive things towards yourself and you're describing, hey, maybe I'm not the presenter that I want to be today, but I'm going to talk about myself the way I want to be. So I'm going to set a vision and talk about what that vision is, like it is already here. That's like putting your foot on the gas and propelling yourself forward. So self-talk is huge. If you think about it, it's intuitive. Like you're around yourself more than any other person on the planet, and you will always be with yourself. So you might as well say nice things to yourself. And it's not only it makes you feel good, it's just it'll help you do more and help you have more capacity and fulfill your potential.
Yeah, it's super. I've always thought that self-talk is tacky, or it just isn't. It's a thing to make fun of people for, and it's like, oh, there's no way that works. And as I've read a couple good books about it and started to buy into it a little bit more, and found a really good application to it on the golf course, because I noticed that my golf game improved drastically after every bad shot I would hit, the inner dialogue, which I would say out loud, would just be, you dumbass, you idiot.
Yep.
Like that was the worst way. What do you do? Like, you just constant beratement. Right. And after making controlled and very difficult amount of effort put forth towards it, stopping that, it's a lot easier to just be present, to play, to not have all of that cortisol build up and just start to destroy yourself from the inside out. So it's a great point.
That's so funny. You talk about like after the fact. I had a client who was very like extremely nervous going into team meetings. And I was like, all right, well, take me through like what's going through your head before you go in. And she said, I'm horrible with people. I don't communicate well, and I don't have anything valuable to say. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's, let's take a look at that. And we got her some kind of interim thoughts, which is I am a good communicator. I have a lot to contribute to the team. And I have great ideas and things like this. And so every time it was before COVID, she would walk through a certain doorway. She would say these 3 phrases to herself to get herself primed, and she would go in and she showed up in a different way. So yeah, self-talk before and after is really important.
That's excellent. Just had a question, and
that's all right. Take your time. It's
No
probably
worries.
because you don't have any hair up there.
dude,
The hold it in.
stuff leaves a lot faster this way.
Yeah, total sidebar on the self-talk thing. So this is actually a question I have for you guys. Do you guys watch the NFL at all, like football?
Mhm. Yep.
Russell Wilson, Denver Broncos. So I'm from Seattle. So I'm like, this was
Russell
the greatest
fan.
shit ever.
Yes.
Okay.
I love Geno Smith, and Russell was a little bit of a punk because he left Seattle. So I'm like, all right. But he's having a horrible season, and he got made fun of for these like press conferences where he was so positive. And I'm like, can self-talk be taken too far where it's just so inauthentic? And it's just like, ugh, I don't believe you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's what I was going to ask. Where does honesty in self-talk come into play? Because at times we could be lying to ourselves. I think honesty plays a big role, but how does it affect self-talk and what we need to say to ourselves, and just being honest with where we are in the process?
Yeah. Well, to me, like Russell Wilson, there's a few press conferences where I'm like, ooh, that just lands the wrong way. I don't believe you. But I appreciate he's trying to like keep himself in a positive frame of mind in a sea of negativity. What I've used personally for myself, or actually my coaches used on me, and what I work with clients on now is interim thoughts. So it might be, hey, take that example. I'm bad with people. Okay, you believe that today. Like that's why you have that thought. You truly believe that today. And the replacement thought of I'm great with people might not be something you believe. It's like, that's a bit of a stretch. I could say that, but I kind of feel like it's a lie. And so you would have an interim thought, which might be something like, I'm learning to be good with people. It's like, do you believe that? It's like, yeah, I believe I'm learning to be good with people, or I'm open to, that I could be great with people one day. Yeah, like I believe that. That's a possibility. And so you use those interim thoughts as a plugin. But I think your point is a good one, because you have to believe what you're saying. If you're just saying these kind of empty mantras and they're hollow, it does no good. So you have to have a little bit of traction for them to work.
Yeah, if a perennial couch potato all of a sudden picks up the mantra that he's the best NFL quarterback, like I don't think that's going to work out.
Yeah,
it's not the same. Maybe one day, but there's a process to everything.
Yeah. And of course, words, actions. You got to put yourself in the right direction mentally, and then you actually got to get off your butt and do something. So.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think you can definitely take self-talk too far. To I mean, your guys' point of having to believe in what you're saying, but when you're on a national stage like that, I think it would help to, at least in that same press conference, explain why you're answering things in a certain way, because I think it comes off to most people that don't understand the concept or understand self-talk at all that this guy is delusional or he is on some serious drug. right? So
You got some special sports supplement.
yeah, but it could just be an elite athlete thing, because if you watch any golf or baseball, a common thing, and I feel like it plays into just protecting yourself, protecting your brain, and making sure that you're still in alignment with what you're trying to do. I mean, if you watch golf, guys that miss a short putt or something will tap out spike marks that aren't there, or a bump that caused the ball to miss the hole, even though they dead pulled it left or dead pushed it right. And they do that a lot. And then if you look at middle infielders in baseball, if a ground ball like hops over them, or they miss it somehow, they always find an imaginary rock, because there are no rocks on any of those pristine fields, and they kind of pick it up and throw it out of the way, like, hey, everybody, it was this rock that caused me to miss that. And while I think that can be taken as a form of arrogance, or to absolve themselves from a mistake that they made, I think at the same time it can kind of play into how our brains work, and how if it in the golf perspective, since I don't play baseball anymore, if I say to myself, wow, I pulled that putt left, I missed it, then maybe coming up to the next short putt that I have, I'm going to potentially think about that. Whereas if I say, oh, look at that spike mark there, tap that out, I didn't do anything wrong, it was an external factor that caused me to miss that, nothing's wrong with my putting stroke. And when you're that elite and that good, it probably isn't anything wrong with your technical ability. But for the average player, it's definitely the Indian and not the arrow.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I was thinking, because you have to protect your headspace at some point. So it's like not being delusional at a certain point. You have to keep yourself, when there's so much negativity, you've got to keep yourself on that train. So I get that. And then there is the point, like your point was interesting. It was like, to me, I go, let me take the legitimate learning and lesson from what I did wrong, and apply that lesson going forward so I can get better. So it's interesting. Like I would say, let me not take the full force of like the negativity, but let me look at that past event and like tease out and pull out the lesson and apply it going forward. And that'll make me better. But I guess for some people it's, I'm just going to kind of keep myself very, very focused on what I have to do.
Yeah. And it could be, I definitely understand what you're saying. And it could be something that's an in-game or in tournament or end round protection. And then it's after that round, it's okay. Okay, I pulled 4 putts, short putts to the left today. Like I need to work on my putting. But when you are in competition, you might need that sort of almost delusional perspective on what's actually going on, because a common thing in golf is you have to play with what you brought to the course that day. Whatever that swing is, you're not going to be the best you every single time you show up to the first tee. As far as your mechanical swing, you could have something that's a little tight. You couldn't have had your great 8 hours of sleep, so you could be a little slow. Something could be off in the timing, but you gotta, the beauty of it is you gotta bring what you have, work with it, and get through it. There's no on course swing correction. There's no trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm doing wrong? Let me try this on the next hole, because that's just going to be a downward spiral to the bottom of the leaderboard. Yeah. So I think it could have that 1-2 punch there, where you're totally protecting yourself in game or in competition, but then you have that look back, debrief to analyze, like, okay, really, there weren't any rocks that affected those ground balls that I missed. I was just slow, or I was just out of position. Here's what I got to work on. So I think it could be a combination of both.
No, I like that a lot. Yeah. And I remember too, like my coach used to yell, be a goldfish. And what he meant by that was you need to forget what just happened, because goldfish have short memories. So if you had a bad play, like be a goldfish, it meant like center yourself, focus going forward. So yeah, I like that. I like that analysis though.
It's almost being like just selective memory, because to Tyler's point, in competition, especially in a sport like golf where it's so mental, any of your thoughts are going to affect how you play. And I would imagine in the corporate world, you probably see the same type of thing. If someone has that negative self-talk whenever they get into a presentation, they may actually physically manifest some of that negative self-talk. And it's not that it's not true. They may be valid what they're saying, but that's not helpful in the moment. It's more helpful to learn from it after the fact and only focus on that positivity. But maybe Russell needs a little cue that like the game is only 4 quarters. The press conference, it does not count as the game.
Yeah, I just wanted him to go up there and be like, I need to do better, which he said, but then he needed to stop talking because he said all this like circly weird stuff. And I'm like, what is going on? But yeah, but maybe he was in competition mindset. But yeah, I love Russell. I'm just giving him a hard time because he left Seattle in such a pouty mood. But
yeah.
Excellent sidebar.
Yeah, no, he's a great example for what I think a lot of people should do. They really should emulate the way that he does his self-talk. Again, maybe not to the extremes that we see in press conferences, but a lot of the like the mic'd up moments that you'll see with Russell Wilson, always positive on the field. And I really believe that has contributed to a lot of the success that he's had on the field. And that's the same everywhere. I highly doubt we would find a elite professional athlete that berates themselves on a daily basis, and especially while they're performing. I don't think it happens.
Yeah, I mean, there's a mic'd up where he's like, they're in this like fourth quarter drive, and he's like, great confidence, no fear, and he was like yelling that to his teammates up and down the sideline. So I think that, yes, Broncos, let's ride at the end of the press conference. Maybe pick your poison there, but yeah. But I think too, it's oh my gosh, something you said made me think of something and it flew out of my head. You were talking about positive self-talk, and I think timing. So like something can be true, but not helpful in that moment. And so you can discern the two, like, hey, that's true, but is it helpful and relevant to me right now? No, let me put that in park and revisit it later. So that's a good point as well.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing that, to go off this same Russell Wilson theme that we got going on here.
I opened up a can of worms here.
It's good.
We watch football. It's all good.
It's good. Watch this masterful segue. All right. But I think what he embodies is just great leadership lessons through that, with the way that he talks in those press conferences, what you're saying he was doing on the sideline, running up and down. I think one of the best or most important qualities of being a leader is leading by example. And if his teammates see him in the press conferences saying, we're terrible, we are the worst team out there, I stink, my front five stinks, everybody stinks, then if they don't see their leader believing anything good about what they're doing or believe that they can go anywhere, then what do they have to look at? So I think it has to be extremely difficult for him to do that.
I don't envy him. I don't envy that man at all.
Yeah.
He got his Subway stuff taken away. He's getting crap on social media from every which direction. But I think there's a balance too. You got to protect your headspace and you want to lead by example. And then there are moments of authenticity is a buzzword, but authenticity and accountability, like, hey, I did not play well that game. I need to do better. Like, that's on me. And just take, like, not all of it. It's not all of his fault. Like Nathaniel Hackett and all of the teammates have their roles to play, but I did not play to my standards and I have to do better, and taking accountability for that. I think as a leader in sports or in business or just leading your own life, when you're able to say that to yourself and other people, you're respected for it. Like, I respect people who are like, I made a mistake or I didn't do as well as I wanted to, and I'm just letting you know that I'm going to do better next time. I'm like, hey, you have my full support. Like, I give you major props for that.
Yeah, maybe a buzzword, but authenticity is, I think, the best way to describe that. And people are drawn towards that. It's honesty. It's a realistic viewpoint of looking at the world. You're not too high or too low. You're just acknowledging where you are. And I think too, you're also not comparing, because whenever we compare ourselves, that's when things get really thrown out of whack. And I feel like when we compare, it'll affect our self-talk too. Do you notice that with your clients and how they?
Yeah,
It's bad.
comparison is the thief of joy. So, I mean, if you're constantly comparing, you're just setting yourself up for disaster. So, I mean, if you're going to compare yourself, I think maybe Tony Robbins said this, but like compare yourself to you yesterday, to the previous you.
Yep.
So, like a great measure of success I use for a lot of my clients on like the mental and emotional piece is what bothered you and like got really under your skin 3 to 5 years ago still upsetting you? Because if not, like you've made progress. And if so, you need to take a look at that because you should always be growing and evolving as a person. So yeah, it's interesting. Like mindset and mind games and headspace is such an interesting area that a lot of people overlook. And I don't know why, because literally everything spreads from your viewpoint and your lens that you have on and that you look at the world through and you take all your experiences in. So I love working with clients on that who are self-aware and know that they need to up level in that area, as well as learning the tactical and practical things of being a business leader.
Yeah, and it takes time. I wish everyone, we were, again, the gentleman we had in the last recording, he was talking about learning a new instrument and how learning that new instrument required him to learn how to circular breathe. And he was sitting in a lesson with guys who'd been doing this their entire life. And he talks about the feeling like, man, I wish I could do that. But he also understood where he was in the process. And so he was totally okay with the fact that someone was way better than he was, because in reality, that person that's better than him, they were in his shoes whenever they started. And so that, because of that lack of comparison, I feel like he gives himself, and people can give themselves confidence and reassurance with their self-talk if they're not comparing themselves to other people all the time.
Yeah, I love that. And like for me, even doing podcasts, my first couple podcasts, oh my goodness, because I was like, I want to be perfect and I want to be so polished like the people I hear on podcasts. And, oh my goodness, it was the farthest thing from that. I have them on my website because the content is okay, the delivery is questionable, but if you go back and listen, you can hear what I'm talking about. But yeah, and I was comparing myself to people who have been public speaking for decades. And I'm like, all right, Emily, take your own medicine here. That's not a path to success. And I also think, we're all unique individuals and we all have our unique mixes of what I'm good at and my experiences and what perspectives I bring. And so when you're trying to compare yourself to someone else and there's an inherent, like, I should be like that person in there, you're taking away from like being the fullest you that you can be. And the world needs that. And so no one can be a better you than you, and everyone else is taken. So you might as well just sit into it and settle into it and optimize the crap out of being you. So comparison is a thief of joy, and that's where it's at.
Love that.
And it's extremely apparent everywhere. I mean, the death scroll on social media is full of constant comparisons, right? Like, well, look what John across the street has, or he just bought, and look at what this friend that I haven't talked to in 20 years from high school has that I don't know why that I care that they have, but yet now I feel bad about myself and it's honestly sad when we spend so much time doing that. And I mean, I've done it before. 100%. And
I do it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's but I love what you guys were saying on the focus on understanding where you are in the process. And a great quote from a book you might have read, Emily, is world class is process, not an event. I was actually reading your blog post earlier before we got on, because I had seen that book, The 5 a.m. Club, before and really wanted to read it and then completely forgot about it. Hence the importance of writing things down. So I did actually look a little bit of it, and I'm really hesitant on reading book reviews because I feel like they're always, not always, because there can be bad books, right? But I'm always hesitant because I don't want to read all of these amazing things and all the highlights and all the good stuff of the book. And then I never get there quickly enough when I start reading it. It's like, oh, the whole thing has just kind of it's not living up to its expectation, but it seems like a fantastic book. And the only reason I kept reading was right in the beginning there, quoting the life's too short to play small with your talents and referencing the man in the arena speech.
Yeah.
That speech to me, I remember hearing it read from a executive in I can't remember what company it was, but he read that in this seminar. And there's actually another book that I read called In the Arena. I'm trying to remember who wrote that. I'd have to look on the bookshelf in the other room, but it's just such a powerful idea of you have to be in the game, right? You have to be in the trenches. You have to be working on working on you, but working on whatever it is before you can go and share that, go and express that to people, because nobody wants to hear advice or take lesson from somebody that hasn't done what they're trying to teach.
And it's so easy to like criticize and throw stuff from the sidelines if you're just like watching the game, right? That's so easy to do. But once you're on the field or on the court or whatever, it's a whole different ballgame. But I think you're right. People respect those who have been on the field or in the arena, so to speak, and who also have failed or suffered or had a hard time and didn't do it perfectly. I think, that's where we learn and that's where we grow. But to me, a good leader is someone who has tried something and failed and not done well in it and have gotten up and gone again. So if I see these, leaders who are like, I do nothing but win, I like rack up the W's all day long. It's like, all right, great. But show me like where you have built, your fortitude and your character and all these important things to be a leader. So yeah, for sure.
And that's how we learn. Sure, we're going to learn from our successes because it shows us what we've done right. But whenever we do encounter failure, that's when we really learn some big lessons, because it probably shapes or shifts our perspective on what is good or bad or what is needed to win or succeed. And so you're right. If there is a leader that has only had wins, I mean, maybe they're just that good, or maybe they just forgot the times that they failed or don't want to think about that. I don't know, but you're absolutely right. Failure is a great way to show ourselves where we need to grow and how we can do it.
Yeah. And it's, we use the word failure, but it's actually a mark of a successful person, if you think about it, right? Because if you're pushing yourself and going outside your comfort zone and are always on that growth edge, you're bound to misstep or fail a couple of times because you're doing something new and different, i.e. my podcasts. But that's how you grow as a person and get better. So that feeling or that, like I embarrassed myself or something like that is actually a mark of success. Because if you do that over and over again throughout your career, throughout your life, you are, again, this evolving, ever growing, sharpening person.
Well, you just showed me a way that I can change my self-talk, because that's a perfect way to look at it. It's a much more positive way to view failure, because it is a moment of growth. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I also think too, like Tyler was saying something about the comparison conversation, but like what you're going after, like material things are kind of like eating cotton candy. Like it's sweet and it tastes good in the moment, but you always want more and it kind of makes you sick. And so taking inventory of what you're going after, and are those finite things, are those things that fill you up or are like ever cycling, you're going to need more and more and more and more of those things, or are you going after things that are infinite, meaning like I can have it, Nico can have it, Tyler can have it, and there's no less of it, and it's better for everyone. So these kind of like replenishing things to go after. So like, justice or love or, compassion, these types of things, which like literally the world, just the more you give of it, the more it generates. Whereas if you're going after like cars or like nice houses, well, okay, you can always have that, but you'll always want a bigger house or a faster car. So taking a look at what you're going after, and are these things, actually within your grasp or a good thing to be going after is a good question as well.
Yeah, I like that. The one question I wanted to ask you that relates to what you just said there is what do you feel is right between these two examples as far as a goal setting scenario? Because we've heard two different things the last, I don't know, month or so. One being with a quote that Nico actually said earlier about people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in a decade. So should we set goals that we know we can attain to be able to keep momentum and go through? Or do we have to take the approach that we heard from David Goggins and set goals that scare you, set goals that are probably something you're not going to reach, but you get so far and so much better in the process of going for and hell, you might even actually accomplish it, which you wouldn't even have expected. But what do you feel, or does it depend on the person or situation, that is the right way to kind of attack that area?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it always depends. But in general, I would say have those big, hairy, audacious goals that kind of scare you, but that also fire you up. And so like Grant Cardone 10X, where it's like, take your goal now and literally times it by 10, whatever it is in any area of life. And so it's like, oh, like I can't do that, but what if I could? And like, what would I need to do to go after that? And how would I need to act? And, all that stuff. So I think having that something that lights your fire at an emotional kind of just intrinsic level, like depth to it. And then with that, that's my big, hairy, audacious goal, like, 10-year plan or what have you. And then maybe build little ladders of like SMART goals. You've heard those SMART, measurable, attainable, time bound, things like that against that wall. So like set the direction and then set up your little ladders to climb it. But I've done the SMART goal thing where it's just that. And yes, it is very measurable. You can put it on a spreadsheet, you can put it on a thing, but it didn't like light my fire. So it wasn't sustainable for me. You need something that is purpose driven and is like, yes, like I want to go after that. Even if I don't attain it, I want to reach for that and I want to go after that every day.
Maybe those SMART goals are better to measure our short-term progress, and the fearful goals are what we shoot for long-term. Because if we're too focused on the SMART aspect of our goals long-term, that maybe that's when we get complacent and we lose momentum and things like that. So I don't know. That's just an observation. I don't know if that's true or not.
No, I like that because like literally inherent in the SMART goal is you're like capping yourself. You're saying, here's what it is. I'm going to define it. I'm going to be able to break it up into whatever. And so by definition, you're inherently putting a ceiling on yourself. So I think the big picture, long-term goal has to be something almost out of reach, like something like, oh, I don't know if I can do that, but I want to go after that. It'll be so fun. And then the smaller goals or how you get to that, how you build up to that might be made up of SMART goals in some areas.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm cutting in and out of mute because I have like lawn people here. So hopefully it's not too loud for you guys.
I can't hear you.
I haven't heard a thing.
Well, it might get louder here soon. We'll see. But I also wanted to comment on what you mentioned on having your goal being focused on something that you can continuously give, or something that's not material in nature. I feel like too many people focus on money as their main goal, which for a time I think is okay. We obviously have to survive and money gives us more options to do so. But whenever we reach a certain point, if our only objective is to make more money without giving it away, I feel like people can run into a wall. So I love that point. And I feel like that's something that more people should focus on as well. Finding a way that they can set a goal and achieve that goal where it gives them opportunities to give back, to connect with other people, and in ways that are in line with their own values. I feel like that's super important as well.
Yeah, I actually have a great story. So I have a client who went through this journey. So he was very driven, very money motivated in his early career, which is all well and fine. I'm fine with being money motivated. That's a very valid thing. And he got to not his midpoint of career, a little bit beyond that, but he kind of had this sensation of, is this all there is type of thing? Like I worked so hard and I've got it. And is this it? He was very proud of his accomplishments and he helped some people along the way, but he had this just like kind of hollow and unsettling feeling. And he's like, Emily, like I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always been business minded. I like making money. Like I know it's not the end all be all, but I like it. And so what he did is he had these causes and charities that he was board members of and involved with. And he said, okay, I'm going to give X% of my money to these charities. So as I make more money, that means that more money is going to these things. So it was his way to kind of redirect his motivations for that. But he did do a check on himself. He did do a pretty big life check of what am I about? What do I want to be about? Is this all there is type of thing? So yeah, I think it's a good thing to check in with ourselves proactively. And sometimes external events or life will just do that for you and put it straight in your face. But yeah, it's a good thing. And I think I'm blessed, like you both, to have it early, where it's like, hey, I'm not sitting at like the very end of my career, the very end of my life going, oh my gosh, what did I do? It's, hey, I'm processing these questions now.
That's a great point too, to have some sort of system to check up on ourselves, just to be honest with where we're at in our goals and if it's truly where we want to be, especially when it comes to money. I know that people could probably just get caught in the loop of, okay, I got the extra promotion or raise that I wanted. Let's get another one, and then another one, and another one. And they lose track of why they were doing that in the first place. And they may lose track of the other options that they may have whenever they do get more money, because Tyler and I believe that money is a tool. It's just something that we use to increase our options. And when you have oodles and oodles of money, there's only so much you can use to give yourself happiness. Seeing happiness in others by giving your money away is just as powerful, if not more so, than acquiring humongous sums of it for yourself. So I think, like you said, it's important to just check ourselves on whatever journey we're on and be honest with where we're at. And if we do need to make slight adjustments and changes, I think that's important too.
Yeah. There's this quote that, let me see if I can get it. It's, when you go to heaven, the only thing you'll take with you are the things you gave away. And to me, that flipped like everything on its head. I was like, whoa, wow. I don't remember where I heard that. But if that's, true, or if that's the lens you're looking at stuff through, it changes the whole equation.
I love that. I don't think I'd heard that. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like just soaking that in right now.
I'm processing.
Yep. I'm like, ooh, that account is kind of low. Okay.
I'm gonna show up empty-handed.
Yep. I got nothing.
You reminded me of some type of quote that says that people don't remember what you did, they remember how you made them feel.
Love that.
Yeah, along those same lines, like if you were consciously giving to people and you made them feel happy, that's what they're going to remember. That's what probably you're going to remember. I was fortunate enough to do some like youth work in my church when I was in high school, and it was called Catholic Heart Work Camp. And so we would go to a city and we would work with the city, or the organization would, to get a group of kids to go out to homes in an area that needed help. Maybe they needed paint jobs, or they needed lawn work done, or something like that. And normally there was some type of thing going on with the owner, even either they were elderly or they had a medical condition or something that just made it so they weren't able to keep up with their property. And every single time that we went there, and even if it was just a simple paint job, the look on the person, the emotion they gave back to us, and just the thanks that they experienced, that was enough for me. Like, I don't even remember how hard the work was. All I remember was the feeling that I got by seeing them happy. And it's just a powerful experience whenever you can do that in life.
Yeah, I love that story. Because to me, like at the end of those days, when you're like, what did I do today? It's like, oh, I did that today. And sometimes you're like, what did I do today? I sent some emails. I did some stuff.
Awesome.
One of the things I want to talk about too is since we just wrapped up our health series that we were doing, and one of the last episodes we were talking about stress, meditation, and then power of having routine. And not to harp on the 5 a.m. club book, but you wrote about it. So obviously it, as I'm seeing it, is the mother of all routines. But were you a member of the 5 a.m. club before you read it, or are you afterwards?
No, so I wasn't before I read it. I'm like working my way up. I'm kind of like the 6 a.m. club or the 6:30 a.m. club. However, I took the principles that were relevant to me and I have incorporated them in. And so you mentioned habit. So one of the things in the 5 a.m. club is this daily blueprint. And it's this quick journal exercise you do at the beginning of the day, which you write down like your plan for the day. And then you do like quick visualization of that going well. So like you have a blueprint for like the day going well. And so when you get to that event, like literally I wrote down like podcasts, like Nico and Tyler were cool on the pre-interview. This should be good. And so you just like prep yourself for like, this is going to be a great podcast. This is going to be a great coaching session or whatever. So I've taken that and I really have gotten a lot out of that. I will not do that now because I get so much out of it. And I've also done the read a book. So I picked a book that doesn't have anything to do with coaching or my industry. And that's allowed in the 5 a.m. club, but I've just chosen to make it very philosophical or, me as a person type of thing. And I read that for 15 minutes and I love it. And it's just kind of a good grounding, centering thing. And I have that checked off for the day. So I've already grown as a person. I've learned something new and I've taken the time to get better. So yeah, I've built those habits out of that book.
That's sweet. I definitely want to get this book now, but I don't know if I'll be waking up at 5 a.m. again because I did that for about 12 years to go to work.
I did it for like 2 days and I was like, it's so dark.
It's so dark.
So
especially
early.
when the rest of your day might not start until like 9:30 or 10. It's like you've done your victory hour by 7 and it's, well, now what, for 2 hours beforehand. But so what else do you incorporate kind of into routines that you might have? Because we were talking about goals earlier, and one thing that I have really tried to do with my routines is kind of break it down. I don't know if you've ever read James Clear's Atomic Habits before.
Yeah.
So I try to break my goals down into small, like super tiny things that I can add into routines just to always have something I can look at that like, hey, you know what? I did, even if it's only 5 minutes, I did 5 minutes of this today, whether it's a book or whatnot, because he talks about the importance of just showing up. And that's literally the number one thing that to do is, sure, if your goal is to read 30 books in a year, that's great. But if you break it down to where your routine item is, I'm going to read for 25 minutes every night, and you get in bed and it's already late and it's like, man, I don't want to read for 25 minutes. So you don't even open the book. That's a lot worse than just reading one page and saying like, you showed up, you read a page and whatnot. So do you kind of do the same thing? Do you take some of the bigger goals that you have for the year or a quarter or something and import them into routine slots, or are they just items that you kind of book out throughout the day that like, hey, I'm going to work on this for an hour around lunch or something?
So first of all, it's really mind-blowing. Literally the call I had before this, I was working with a client. I gave him that reading example of like read a page a day. I was like, oh my gosh, he's saying it. He's saying it again. So yeah, I definitely micro habits or like bite-sized chunk it or whatever, definitely do that. I'm a huge proponent of that. But yes, for me, I've tried different things, to be honest. So I used to be very like, I'm going to block out this 2-hour time block and I must do this activity. And with something that's what you need to do, but more so I go, I kind of do a Russian doll exercise. Like for my life, we talked about purpose and being purpose driven, all that. And then within my coaching business, like what's my end goal there? And then breaking that up into this year, what do I need to do? This quarter, what do I need to do? This month, this week. And so I'll take, like, for instance, at the beginning of the week, I'll say, what are my big rocks? What are my top priorities that align with all of those things I just said. And I will make sure I have those on the calendar. So some time block that I can move around. I give myself a little bit of flexibility, but I identify the big rocks I have for that time interval. And I make sure I either have them in my calendar, I just have them top of mind as I go throughout the week, and I make sure I get those done.
Nice. That's
excellent.
I like the Russian doll analogy. As soon as you said that, I was like, I picture that. I know exactly what she's talking about.
Yeah. But again, it like makes it so it's like, okay, I'm doing this project with which in and of itself might be like mundane and kind of stale and dry. But oh no, that's getting me to this, and this, which goes to your higher purpose and vocation. So it again gives you that intrinsic motivation, which I think is really important to try to maintain and keep tapped into.
Yeah. When you plan those things out, how do you use it? Is there a specific device that you have like to track your habits or plan these goals out? Do you have a whiteboard? Do you use that? Do you have a pen and paper planner? What's kind of your preferred method of how to organize all those things?
Yeah. So I do have a wall calendar the entire year, so I can kind of see my different things I have there, which is really nice to look at. It gives you literally perspective to zoom out. And then I have in my studio, I have kind of clear whiteboards, and I have 3 of them. So I'll take one if I'm trying to build a new habit or get that inertia, like the initial inertia to do something. I'll literally have draw out a calendar, and my job is to connect the check marks, right? So like you said, don't have a day where you drop, just read one page and you get that check mark because you have continued the habit. So if I need like literally that kind of forcing function or guardrails out the gate, then I'll put that for myself for those ones.
Sweet. Thanks. I don't want to be super nosy, but I'm always interested on how different people go about those things.
I like literally like I have clients who are like, I need an app, but I need this thing. So I have a couple like, there's hundreds of habit tracking apps, but and people are like, how do you like do your day? What's your CRM or whatever? I'm like, I use Google Docs and I use lists and I cross things out. I just keep it simple. So, I mean, whatever works for people. If you like the fancy kind of Notion and dashboards and stuff like that, more power to you. Go do that. For me, it's like simple, like just keep it simple.
I need to get one of those annual wall calendars you're talking about, because I'm imagining that. I'm like, that would be sweet.
It's so nice.
Yes. I mean, obviously we have technology. We could flip through it on our phones, but seeing everything at once is awesome. I'd love the idea of that.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, there's a lot of, I wanted to go down a lot of other rabbit holes we can, but somehow it's been an hour already. Yeah.
So,
that's when you know it's really good conversation.
We'll have to do a part 2 if you're on board.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm definitely down with that. Well, in the spirit of closing things, Emily, let everyone know how they can reach out to you and contact you for your coaching services, and do a little marketing spiel for them.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, my website is nextlevel.coach. So next level, all one word, .coach. I'm also on social media, primarily Twitter, so Next Level Emily. And then I do have a book called Hacking Executive Leadership. So we touched on a few things here, but if you want the full deep dive, Hacking Executive Leadership is on Amazon and Kindle. There's an Audible version, so you can find it wherever books are sold.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your time. We'll definitely have to see how we can plan this again whenever time allows, and loved your perspective and everything you shared with us today, and truly think it's going to be valuable for anyone who tunes in. So greatly appreciated.
Yeah, likewise. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely.
For sure.